UK5 is the season that reinvigorated my love of Drag Race. I was a little fatigued after UK4 and season 15 and All Stars 8. They all fell very flat for me personally, so after kind of focusing on my own drag competition and going a few months Drag Race free, I came back in with UK5 with no expectations and was absolutely blown away by it. The cast, the challenges, the pacing, the edit, every single detail was so improved from UK4. I have since watched this entire season back again for this video, and I liked it even more on a binge viewing. If you haven't seen my video about how much I love this damn season and how it's a gigantic improvement from UK3 and 4, start with that first. I'm not going to repeat much from there, but I think it adds a lot of context into my overall thoughts on this series. I don't know what they did differently with casting this season or with production, like who they fired, who they hired, I have no idea, but this is one of the most consistent seasons and casts in Drag Race history. Early outs like Alexis and Naomi had so much personality and talent. Underdogs like Banksie and Kate were incredibly rootable. Tamara brought so much delightful chaos. She's basically the Alyssa Edwards of the UK. You have powerhouses like Cara Melle and Michael Maruli, who were so fun to watch all season long. And then, obviously, Ginger, who is one of the most dominant winners in UK history. There's truly not a dud on this cast that made it to the final edit. With drama, workroom shenanigans, and so much chemistry, and a pretty solid boot order, this season just had everything. Diving right into this season, let's talk about the premiere episode. I still find it iconic how they were able to edit out that disqualified 11th queen as well as they did. If you didn't know that she was there, you would have absolutely no idea. So incredible job to the editors. The premiere episode is the typical ball that you would get in a UK premiere, except this time they have to perform on the runway in front of a bunch of Drag Race's international superstars. I thought this was a great way to shake up the premiere format that we're all used to, and also having their entrance looks be judged was awesome as well, and it was a very surprising little twist. I will say, this episode confused the hell out of me with the second look, if you want to call it that, in the ball. So at Club Tickety Boo, where they perform on the runway, so many of their looks are like almost identical to their entrance looks or like use the same fabric or patterns. Like, it's very weird, and at first I thought they were just like wearing the same thing and just like took part of it off. But then a few of them had something like really different, and it was just kind of confusing. I was lost. I wonder if they were like asked to bring a second look in the same vein as their entrance, or like if they didn't ask them to bring these club looks at all, so they just pulled random shit from their closets that happened to be like kind of close. It was, I don't know, it's weird. I don't know to this day what was going on, so if anyone knows the answer, please put it in the comments. After their 3 looks, a top 5 is chosen, and everyone else is called safe. Now, I like this format where we can highlight like 5 of the best of the week instead of having the like fake out bottom moment. Now, it is unfortunate that Tamara Thomas had the wing malfunction on her final runway, since literally all of her looks were so great, and I think she was one of the best performers on the runway. She easily could have been top 2 with Cara Melle if it weren't for this little malfunction. Of the 5 that they did choose, I agreed with 4 of them. Ginger was a little suspicious for me personally. Her looks were all like okay. Her last one was pretty, but she had one of the weakest performances in the Club Tickety Boo moment. And besides her 3rd runway, I don't think her first 2 looks really stood out among the pack. Everyone else, I could easily see why they were in the top. This episode actually starts this little mini storyline between Delicious and Alexis St. Pete, which, listen, I truly do not understand this. Like, why Dee is so villainized in this moment. After her wig came off on the club runway, Cara Melle, like, literally asks her, like, oh, who do you think is going to be in the bottom with you?
Who do you think is going to be your other? I think Alexis.
And Dee Dee says Alexis because she had the most slip ups, like, besides her. Which, like, is literally not a lie. Like, she almost fell over. Her breastplate was literally out, like, flung out of her costume the entire time. I mean, she wasn't being mean. I don't think she was being nasty from what we saw. She was just, like, answering the question probed to her. But everyone starts acting like she's playing mind games and that she's, like, horrible for saying anything. And, like, I was really lost and kind of confused. I think it's because Vicky Vivacious brings it up in the finale in order to get screen time that they felt like they had to make it a bigger deal than maybe it was in the edit. So there's like the payoff of it later. And also it kind of paints Alexis in like a very sympathetic light. It was just really odd, and I think it turned people off kind of unfairly to Dee Dee very quickly. And I think this lasted for her entire tenure on the show, with her receiving probably the least amount of love of anyone on this cast, and kind of getting some flack for sending home a lot of fan favorites. This moment all ends up being for naught, with her saying that they're going to be in the bottom together because there's a top two instead of a bottom two. The top two of this episode is Cara Melle and Vicky Vivacious. Now, if this was a solo win, I think Cara Melle 1000% gets it hands down. And that second placement, I think, could be argued for sure. But Vicky getting it, I personally did not see for her. Her looks were all, like, lovely, especially her third. But her runway performance was mostly just her stealing Sminty's kind of sad twerk for 2 minutes. I just felt like other queens stood out a little bit more in this episode than Vicky did, and I was kind of shocked when she took home the win. I have like a lot of thoughts on Vicky, but we're going to save them for a moment later on in the season that really made me suspicious. In my head, I think I'll always remember this episode as a Cara Melle win accidentally, since like she was just the one. Kind of like Diabetes in the catwalk challenge. Like, it seems like it's such an obvious win that my brain just kind of assumes that's what really happened. But unlike in Dia's case where Rue just shows somebody else, Cara lost the lip sync this episode fair and square due to this heavy headpiece that she had. It's unfortunate, but luckily she will have another moment to shine very, very soon. The next episode is our first elimination episode, and it is a design challenge, 2 fashion challenges back to back. Now, the queens are given a bunch of pet supplies, and they have to make couture fashion out of them. So I think they're definitely running out of, like, we can just give them Dollar Tree shit every time, right? Like, we have to spice it up. Let's give them, like, let's go to, instead of Dollar Tree, let's go to PetSmart. Which, like, work, sure. Now, the big storyline of this episode is between roommates Tamara Thomas and Cara Melle. Tamara kind of, like, shades Cara and discredits her work as a designer and seamstress in front of Rue, and Cara does not take lightly to this. Tamara and Cara are 2 of my absolute favorites on this season, so seeing this storyline play out between them was really kind of fun to watch. Cara was absolutely justified in her anger towards Tamara, and it's kind of like a really realistic situation to watch play out, unlike some of the other like petty drama that we usually see on Drag Race. And because there's history between these 2 queens, that makes it even more interesting. Very quickly, Cara Melle becomes the main character of the season, for the first half at least. The first 3 episodes are kind of like one big arc for her, and after that arc is complete, she kind of starts fading more into the background of the season until her eventual elimination. But rewatching these early episodes, it's crazy how much winner potential she gave off. I think for sure we will see her back on some iteration of All Stars. I mean, she is incredible TV and an incredible queen who the audience fell in love with, as they should. So of course they're going to bring her back. Unfortunately, this argument with Tamara is used to justify some pretty rigged placements this episode. Cara ends up in the bottom 3 for her little toucan look, while Tamara ends up in the top 3 for fabric on her body. And this is like fully done just to feed some fire to the flame of their argument. I think that they were hoping that jealousy and anger would kind of continue to boil in Cara for this, as Tamara is given praise in a challenge that Cara should have knocked out of the park. And Cara ends up almost in the bottom too. Now realistically, Cara's look was miles better than Tamara's, and Tamara is very lucky she wasn't in the bottom this episode. while Cara's bottom 3 made literally no sense. Even with the unfinished bottom of her look, she was still safe as fuck this episode, in my opinion. This is one of, I think, the biggest instances of Riggory on the entire season, and it had me very worried going forward that instances like this would continue for the entirety of the season. I mentioned in the video that I referenced at the start of this one how I had so many expectations about how things would go just based off of like Drag Race's track record on how they treat certain queens over others and how I've seen things get rigged before. But going into placements this episode, I fully thought that Banksie deserved to win and Alexis deserved to be in the bottom, but I never expected those things to actually happen. In the premiere, Banksie was kind of a non-entity and Alexis was being set up as a huge underdog after the heavy-handed editing of her moment with Dee Dee. So I thought it would be impossible for them to risk losing her right off the bat, and for them to reward Banksie when Dee Dee also did well and had much more storyline armor already. So I was so delightfully surprised when Banksie got the win and Alexis wasn't spared from elimination. And that's why I love this season. It subverted all of my expectations and broke all of the patterns it tends to follow, which made it exciting to watch and not nearly as infuriating. So while they went off the rails with the Kamara and the Tamara of it all, they restrained with the outcomes of the episode, which I appreciated. We see that Alexis and Naomi Carter are the bottom 2, and this felt very correct. I mean, Naomi's look is, I think one of the worst of all time, but like in an iconic way. Like not as bad as like La La Ree, but like we're in that realm. They lip sync to Hot in It, which like I gay gasped when it came on. It's such an iconic song for a lip sync, and for the most part, I think they did it justice. I think they were probably expecting Alexis to do better than she did, though, since we'll see very soon that they don't really give a shit about Naomi, but Naomi outperformed her and they send Alexis and Pete home first, which was shocking to me. She had all of the makings of a top 4 finalist in my eyes, so to see her the first out had me very excited for the trajectory of the season. And that's not shading Alexis, it's just refreshing to see something super unexpected happen. Now, the next episode is the girl groups, which was supposed to be at the final 10, which is just so many girls. So at least with one less than expected, we had one group of 4, which I think is like a perfect amount. Like top 8, 2 groups of 4, that's perfect. 2 groups of 5 is like, you're really pushing it. But whatever. The song, I don't actually remember it off the top of my head, so I guess you can decide what that means for yourself on the quality. This episode goes basically exactly how you would expect it to. The group full of big threats and dancing divas slays, and the group of lovable weirdos do a good job, but they aren't able to win in the end. So I'm glad this is another non-elimination episode, to be honest. No one under-delivered, deserved to go home, especially since Naomi's team was at a disadvantage, with her unable to dance due to a leg injury from doing WWE moves in the workroom. There really isn't a ton to talk about this episode. I mean, everything was pretty cut and clear. The way, though, we had Sophie Ellis-Bextor as the guest judge, but no lip sync to any of her songs. Rude. Imagine Murder on the Dance Floor with Tamara and Cara. The slayage that would have been, that song would have popped off way sooner than when fucking Saltburn came out. But Cara and Tamara, they're the top 2 from their team. Very correct. And Cara wins the lip sync and the challenge. And this kind of avenges her earlier top 2 loss in the premiere. It also kind of ends her storyline as a frontrunner, since next episode, we see the wheels start to fall off the train. The next episode, it's another fantastic one. It is the Disaster Class Challenge. The queens have to host panels about different topics and give their expertise, kind of like the DragCon panels we see in the US. So they're supposed to toe the line between sincere and comedic, and Tamara gets to choose the teams since she won the mini challenge. Now, this is interesting since it puts people who I don't think would have naturally gravitated towards each other on teams together. I mean, we see the literal top 3 all in one group as Tamara chooses Michael and Ginger, and they win the challenge. So it's kind of like a weird, omen of what's to come. This entire episode It's just a fantastic showing for the three of them. Ginger has been pretty safe and in the background up until now, but Tamara and Michael have like consistently been in the top, but now they finally get their win. So all three of them snatched their first win, and from here on out, it's kind of the three of them dominating the season. What makes this episode pretty rigged is the way that it was judged. It was half judged in teams, half judged individually, which is always a little bit suspicious. And I mean, they only do this when they want to reward one whole team, but save someone from the like least successful team from having to lip sync. In this case, Vicky Vivacious. This episode definitely added to my theory that Vicky was chosen to be top 4 early on and was going to be pushed there like some other contestants in the UK have previously. I do think her episode 1 win was like a bit suspicious, but this episode really made my Riggory alarm go off. Vicky is on a team with Banksie and Cara Melle, and their entire team put the disaster in disaster class. They forget each other's names, they stumble over their words, they miss cues, they have awkward jokes. Banksie actually does an okay job as the host of their skit. She does have plenty of jokes that land, and she has the most endearing personality, but even she has slip-ups throughout the entire thing. So just watching, to me, it seemed really obvious that they would be the bottom 3, and Banksie would probably be saved from lip-syncing. Well, that did not happen because they had to sacrifice the girl who just wasn't giving what they needed from her, who was on a completely different team. The team of Dee Delicious, Naomi Carter, and Kate Butch were pretty good. I mean, they had a fun bit where they were using like dirty acronyms. I think it worked pretty well. Kate was unsurprisingly delightful the entire time, and this was, I think, one of Dee Dee's best moments on the season. Naomi Carter, however, I think she forgot that this was supposed to be a comedic challenge as much as it was supposed to be an informative challenge. She definitely droned on about like the advice that she had in a very like serious tone, and I don't think she really had a single joke. I mean, she is naturally charismatic, but I don't think that was able to keep her segment from being boring still. But even then, she was better than the last group by a mile, so why did she end up in the bottom 2 over most of the worst group? I think there's a few things that went into this. I think in general, she'd been underperforming to this point. She was average in the premiere. She was in the bottom for the design challenge. She didn't like annihilate the lip sync as much as I think everyone expected her to in episode 2. And then because of her injury, she basically sat out of the girl groups challenge performing from a couch. And then this episode, she definitely dropped the ball on the comedy aspect. She was great in confessional, but it's easy to see that she probably wouldn't have been making it to the very end of the season with or without Riggory. Whereas everyone in the bottom group, Cara, Vicky, and Banksie, they all had a win at this point, winning the first 3 episodes. And we're in episode 4. So the fact that our 3 winners all underperformed, it's kind of a problem. I mean, they'd all shown a lot of promise, both in the challenges and in the confessional, and I think they were just kind of higher up on production's priority list than Naomi Carter was. But even factoring in the runway, Vicky was saved so hard this episode. Her runway was, I'm going to be bold and say, the golden boot of the season. I mean, it was not good. She had some really iconic looks this season. This one was not one of them, whereas Cara and Banksie had 2 of the best runways of the entire episode. Naomi, on the other hand, her look was like expected for the category of slaycation, but it was really cute, it was inoffensive, it was fine, it was like a solid look, nothing wrong with it. In every aspect, Vicky should have been lip syncing here. She dropped the ball in the challenge and the runway very hard, but Naomi is sacrificed instead, and she lip syncs against Cara Melle, who we've now seen lip sync twice, and I'm sure producers were not worried would lose to Naomi Carter, who's suffering from an injury. So it's a close battle. Cara does outperform her, And I think she also just has more momentum in the competition. So Naomi sachets away in what I see as a very unfair elimination. And add this to the list of black queens in the UK that producers mistreat and don't give a shit about. Luckily, this episode was the outlier in the season, and I think one of the few moments where the old ways of production kind of came through a little bit. The next episode is a heartbreaking one since we do lose Banksie. It's one of those moments where you're like desperately looking for Riggory so that you can be angry about Banksie leaving, but unfortunately, there's no Riggory to be had in this episode. The challenge is the Panto Rusical, which was awesome to see since it really highlighted British culture and a whole new audience gets to be introduced to what Panto really is. So many queens killed this episode. Ginger, Michael, Vicky, Kate, literally any of them could have been given the win, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. Tamara and Cara are safe, which is perfectly correct. They were good, they were fine. And that unfortunately leaves Banksie and Dee Dee as the bottom two. Banksie played the villain and just did not give what needed to be given. She was at a 7 when almost everyone else was at a 10. And that's the vibe. I mean, she didn't flop by any means, but I don't think she did enough to keep herself out of the bottom. And Dee Dee is more of a victim of circumstance where everyone else just did better than her. That doesn't mean she didn't do well. She just didn't do as well. If there could have been just a bottom one this episode, it probably would have felt more correct, since really Banksie was the only one not firing on all cylinders. But also in this episode, we get the great Mirror Mirror runway, which gave us some awesome looks, and I Dreamed a Dream as the lip sync song. Now, I'm sure they were hoping for another memory moment like Taste gave, and Dee Dee did do incredible. It just wasn't to that level. I fucking love this song so much. I'm so happy that it was a lip sync. I think they did it justice. But unfortunately, we lose Banksie, who I think was an amazing addition to the season. She gave us drama, she gave us looks, she gave us heart, and I'm sure we will be seeing her on our screens again soon. I mean, she is a fantastic versus the world pull. So now we go from an episode with iconic challenge performances to a pretty subpar Snatch game. To be honest, I don't think anyone really knocked it out of the park and fully secured a win. The funniest were definitely Kate and Tamara, but neither of them really impersonated their celebrity. They just kind of did their own thing. Ginger Johnson wins this challenge as Barbara Cartland, but I'm going to be very real. I didn't find this performance funny at all. It didn't even get one chuckle out of me. Maybe that's just me not being British. Maybe that's me not knowing the references. It just did not work for me. I was it's fine. It's completely fine, but I'm not gagging. I literally, I think I preferred Cara Melle's Dionne Warwick to Ginger's Barbara Cartland, if we're being honest. Ginger getting the win, it makes even less sense when you look at the runway, which was Heart On. I don't know what this season was doing with just reusing all of the season 14 runway prompts, but whatever. Ginger's look is not great. I do like the concept, but I think the execution just leaves much to be desired. Yeah, I mean, I don't think she should have gotten this win, if I'm being fully real, especially with it being her third win in a row. That always kind of becomes a little boring, just seeing one queen dominate every week. I think that was a big hindrance to UK4 with Danny Beard and Cheddar Gorgeous just passing the badges back and forth all season long. And this is really only something that happens in the UK. I don't know why, but it happens constantly where queens are winning 3 challenges in a row. And to be real, I think Ginger actually gets robbed of a different win later on in the season, so me not giving her one here really just kind of balances everything out. As for the bottoms, I think the bottom 2 was pretty clear, with Vicky Vivacious and Dee Dee Licious really struggling, but I was shocked they didn't give Michael a low placement. I know they always need to have more than one safe girl for Untucked, and Cara was called safe, but this is top 7 and it's Snatch Game. I feel like they could have critiqued everyone and given Cara a high placement for her solid Snatch Game, her amazing runway, and then Michael, who was all kinds of cringe. but had an amazing runway. I think she could have just been low. And honestly, this runway, it's one of my favorites of the entire season. Like, it would have been nice to see her get critiqued for it and, like, get some flowers for it. It's just, like, that weird, cool shit that I live for. But I fully think they were expecting Vicky to slay the lip sync and then she could send Dee Dee home. But this is the episode where Dee Dee emerges as the lip sync assassin of the season and destroys Vicky in this lip sync. There was truly nothing production could have done here to like save Vicky. She was like DOA next to Dee Dee. So shockingly, Vicky goes home in one of my favorite looks of the entire season. And like I said, I thought she was a lock for top 4. So seeing her go was exciting, not because I didn't like her, but because my expectations this season were continuously being shattered, and I was at the edge of my seat every single week. Also, not knowing spoilers, that definitely helped as well. But we're at the top 6 now, and we are at the episode where the queens pair off and act in these dramatic little soapy skits. Now, this episode garnered a lot of controversy since Cara Melle is sent packing. And I think for a lot of people, she had been top 4, like, in their minds the entire time. Like, she was obviously going to be top 4. But like I said, Cara had kind of been fading into the background of the episodes since her win in episode 3 and then her subsequent bottom placement right after, while queens like Ginger and Kate Butch and Tamara Thomas had become kind of the main characters in the episodes. And over time, Cara had kind of let go her lead in the competition. This episode had the puppet mini challenge, which Ginger really did good at, and because of that, she wins and gets to pick everyone's partners for the maxi challenge. So she chooses Kate Butch as her partner, which is kind of like an obvious choice at this point. We haven't really talked about Kate. Going into this episode, Kate had been doing really well. She was finally picking up steam after spending the first half of the competition safe every single week. She'd shown that she was funny, she'd shown she was campy, she could perform, but really, her looks had been holding her back the entire season. A tale as old as time, if you will. With Ginger and Kate working together, I don't think there was any doubt which team was going to pull ahead of the others, but this time, Kate actually outshined even Ginger, and with a stunning runway look to match, gets her first win of the season. And it's a nice finish to kind of a season-long arc of her fighting to stand out among the pack. Fans adored Kate Butch. I actually think she was the fan favorite of the season. Her and Cara Melle were, I think, for sure. Kate is just, she's so endearing. She was the narrator of the season. She's always cracking jokes in the confessional and detailing everything going on. It was nice to see her finally get her moment to shine in this episode. Now, as for the other 4 contestants, this is where the controversy starts. As we see during the shooting of the skits or whatever, Tamara and Dee Dee are a total mess. Like, they're forgetting their lines, they're missing their marks. It's pretty unprofessional, and it's edited as so. But then, when the final product is shown, their skit is, like, actually hilarious. Like, they, despite all the challenges they faced, all the mishaps, they turned it out. And the last team, Michael and Cara, are fine. Like, they're not terrible, but their skit has the worst writing and they had the worst material to work with, so it naturally just doesn't make you laugh as much as the other skits do. Cara and Michael end up as the bottom 2, and people were not happy, saying it should have been Dee Dee and Tamara or Dee Dee and Michael for their lack of professionalism during recording. And I can definitely see the argument. I mean, I think back to UK2 during the top 4 acting challenge where a very similar thing happened to Lawrence Chaney. She was a total wreck during the recording. She was forgetting lines, being down on herself, not giving what was needed. But in the final product, she actually turned it out and was in the top. I think it comes down to, I agree that Tamara and Dee Dee were definitely in trouble during the recording, but like, their final skit was hilarious. Like, they infused so much of their personalities into their roles, which made it so much more endearing than Cara and Michael just, like, reading lines and, like, getting through it. If, like, Cara and Michael were even close to the success that Dee Dee and Tamara had in the final product, like, I would agree and say Dee Dee and Tamara should be in the bottom, but they weren't. Cara was, I think, the worst out of anyone this episode. She just, like, didn't shine the way we all know that she can. And Michael was, like, fine. But like I said, they were working with a dud of a script, and they did what they could, but it just wasn't enough to elevate the script to anything better. So I do think it was fair for Tamara and Dee Dee to be spared. I'm sure some of you will call me a hypocrite since I said Lawrence should have been in the bottom in the UK2 challenge for the same thing. But, like, that was the final four where Tace and Bimini were just as good as Lawrence in the final skit. And the only thing setting them apart was Lawrence's breakdown during recording. So I think it's similar situations, but with different outcomes in the end. And shockingly, we see Cara Melle sent home by Michael Maruli. I mean, the lip sync is like a sexy, slinky song, which fits since they're both in lingerie, but Cara slips early on and is able to recover, but Michael was flawless throughout this entire performance. And so Cara Melle goes home, and I think a lot of people's winner pick, or at least finale pick, suddenly was gone. And this is, I think, where Michael Maruli emerges in the season. Like, she'd always been doing well. She'd always been there. She'd always had her moments. But, like, this was, like, I think the turning point in her storyline where she sent home a potential winner, and she kind of takes her place in the narrative. I mean, seeing Cara Melle go, like, I loved her, but it was exciting to see her go, because, like, that's three queens I pegged as top four gone, two of them back to back. And it didn't feel rigged, like, it felt natural. And that kind of left the field open for, like, other queens who had been doing well, but I just didn't see production wanting to see make the end, like Kate and Michael and Tamara. They finally had a chance now. So we are at the top five, and it is the makeovers, which I know is a controversial challenge. I love this challenge. I always have. Do I always love the judging? No. And I think I have a video on makeovers, like the Riggory of makeovers. I think I did. I'll put it up top. This was another top tier 10 out of 10 episode. We got to see so many amazing interactions between the queens and the workers from Britain's LGBTQ hotline who they're making over. I mean, there are so many important conversations had, and it's a really touching episode. I mean, it's crazy how much I adore this top five, every single one of them. I mean, this season really makes you fall in love with this cast, and I think it's one of the reasons why it was so well received. This is, unfortunately, though, one of those makeovers where the storylines mattered a bit more than the looks themselves, since we see Michael Maruli snatch her second win of the season and her first solo win, and she did a good job. But this was fully a win because of the deep bond that she forged with her makeover partner and the moments that they gave together throughout this episode. She had the oldest person there. He gave so much, like, insight to being around during the AIDS crisis and what it was like being gay, like, before most of these queens here were even born. So it was a really touching relationship that we got to see form, and I understand why narratively you would want to reward her for, you know, not only making him look great, but also for giving them the best stuff to work with in the editing booth. But yeah, I mean, Michael's interesting this season since she almost always is in the top half of the competition. She was high all the time, but it seemed like for the first, like, 2/3 of the season, she was always just kind of, like, outshined by one or two other people. And then all of a sudden at the end, she just, like, bursts into turbo mode. She wins the last two challenges. She kills the finale. She gave some of the best runways of the season. She showed a lot of heart as well. And so part of me thinks that Michael partly gets the win here over Ginger because the judges loved the story, obviously, between her and her partner. But I also think at this point, with Cara gone, with Vicky gone, with Banksie gone, all won challenges, they're all gone now. They needed someone to give Ginger some competition for the win. Kate was, like, on her way out the door in this episode, and, like, Tamara, she was dripping in personality, and she'd done well in a lot of challenges, but I don't think that they saw her as being ready for the crown. So Michael was kind of the next best option after Ginger, so her getting a win here kind of helps that case out a lot. But, like, in reality, the makeup on Geezer Manuli, which, like, that fucking name, I'm dead. It was pretty rough. I mean, the fit of the outfit was a bit off. I think that, like, I don't love when you just have two of the same outfit because, like, of course, there's going to be resemblance there. Like, you're both just wearing the exact same look and wig and makeup. So, like, I think it's kind of actually harder to incorporate two different looks that kind of give the same vibe and still have there be resemblance, which I think Ginger did. I'm just going to be honest. Ginger, this is an S tier makeover. The makeup, the looks, the fit, the performance. I mean, it is a top 3 makeover ever in my eyes, which call me crazy. Something about the look, something about everything that she did, it just like spoke to my soul. And I was stunned that she didn't get the win, but 4 wins in 8 episodes, I do see that it's kind of excessive. Which is why I'm like, if you didn't give her the Snatch Game win earlier, you could have given her the win here when she deserved it more. But yeah, it's, too late for that. Now, the bottom 2 is Dee Licious and Kate Butch. And this was a very tough challenge to judge. I actually don't think there were any flops. I think Tamara is lucky that she beat her makeover partner so fiercely, because the wig that she put on her was so wrong. It looked great on Tamara, but that wig weighed more than her makeover partner. So it just wasn't the right silhouette. It was falling off of her head. It was not great, but their charisma, their performance on the runway, the looks otherwise were fantastic. So I understand why Tamara was safe, but she should have been low. She was high safe kind of. She could have been low here. But then you have Kate, who the looks were fine. I liked the story, but the makeup was a bit rough on her makeover. There was basically no family resemblance at all. They just looked like friends at school. And kind of same with Dee Dee. There was really no resemblance other than hey, we're at a party and we're having fun in 1987. So we do get the Kate versus Dee Dee bottom 2 to This Hell by Rina Sawayama, which iconic. And this is the lip sync of the season. We've had some great lip syncs. Naomi versus Alexis was great. Cara versus Tamara was great. Dee Dee versus Banksie was great. This one blows them all out of the water. This lip sync was everything. Dee Dee, she was the lip sync assassin of the season. I mean, she lip synced 4 times. She sent 3 queens home. And not only 3 queens, 3 challenge winners. She had 0 wins, and she was sending home challenge winners left and right. She ate the lip syncs this season, but my favorite of hers is this one. It is a perfect blend of the campiness and the cuntiness that she puts into her performances. Dee Dee came in with, I think, some big shoes to fill as Crystal Versace's drag sister, and I think the storyline kind of followed her the entire season, as she continuously does her best to keep up and succeed and prove that she deserves to be there, and she is as talented as, Crystal, but continuously I think she lets the judges down, she lets herself down. But when she's in the bottom is truly when we see her power unleash. She is one of the best lip syncers of the franchise, and despite her sending home some fan favorites, I'm happy we got a full season worth of Dee Dee. I think we got a lot of different layers of her. She was always fun in the confessional, and, I thought going in I knew the exact queen that she would be, and she continuously proved me wrong the entire season, to my delight. We lose our love, Kate Butch, here, and if they hadn't done 2 top 2s earlier in the season, this could have actually been a double Shantae. I mean, Kate did really well against Dee Dee, and she probably would have devoured the roast the next episode and then made the finale, but that's for another timeline. So we are at the top 4. It is the roast, and another great episode where everyone does really well, and picking the bottom is hard. Even queens like Tamara and Dee Dee, who didn't have the highest of expectations going into a roast, they did really, really well. This is the 3rd or 4th challenge this season where everybody did really good. This cast really is top tier. The roast, it's gladiator themed, which is okay, whatever. The queens all make the judges and the cast laugh, and realistically they could have just put them all through to top 4. But I think they didn't want Dee Licious there, to be honest. I think them putting Tamara in the bottom with her, they both, I think, were the bottom 2, for real. But I think they knew that, Tamara would probably send Dee Dee home. And they could have 3 in the finale that, each of them could win. Dee Dee was fantastic, but she never had a challenge win. She spent most of the season in the bottom. She was kind of the Jombers, where it's okay, she can make finale, but, is she gonna win? Probably not. Michael Marulli gets the win over Ginger Johnson, which was surprising but deserved. and Dee Dee goes home. So everything checks out this episode. Everything makes sense. Going into the finale, we have Michael Maruli, Ginger Johnson, and Tamara Thomas. And I remember being like so at peace because I would have been thrilled if any of them won. I loved all three of them all season long. I think they all delivered. Tamara was probably my favorite of the three in personality, but I thought Michael going in was my favorite as like, I want to see this queen win. But obviously I love Ginger Johnson. She ate the season. Literally anything could have happened and I would have been fine with it. Tamara Thomas, my queen, my love. I love her so much. She is just like a joy to watch. And I think that they can genuinely milk her for years if they want. They can put her in Versus the World, give her a WoW show, put her on a US All Stars. Like, I don't care. Like, I just need more of her on my TV. She's one of those people who you look at, you hear, and immediately you can clock they are going to be a humongous star. So while I don't think this was her season to win, I'm so glad we got an entire season with her. She was kind of like that little extra spice that just like made this season what it was. So going in, I kind of knew that it was like probably 95% likely Ginger was going to win the season. But, I mean, the judges all loved her. We never saw her waver in her slayage once. But after the fight Michael Maruli put up in all aspects of the finale, I actually thought it was much closer by the end of the episode. Michael was my favorite in the challenge. She was my favorite on the runway. She was my favorite in the final lip sync. But that still wasn't enough to pull ahead of Ginger. I mean, does that mean it's rigged? I don't think so. I think either of them were extremely deserving of being the winner. And just them being the top two, I think, made so much sense and was like, yeah, this checks out. Either of them winning, I'm cool with. They both deserve it. So overall, this was an amazing season. A brilliant return to form for the franchise. And shockingly, there wasn't that much Riggory either. But there still is some things that would change, and we'll get into that in the un-Riggory video next week. But dare I say, this was the strongest season of Drag Race that I watched in 2023 and probably beats everything in 2022. This season was so good. And then Canada 4 was so good. And now season 16 is really good. So like we're in a new like dawn of great seasons of Drag Race and I'm so happy to be in it. I really needed some kind of like shot of adrenaline to like, you know, invigorate my love of the series, and I got it. And I literally like just talking about the season, I want to go rewatch it. Like it's really, really good. And I'm excited to go over the unrigging because some things definitely do change and it's a little bit interesting. So make sure you're subscribed so that you see that. We're so close to 75K. We're only a few thousand away. So if you are not subscribed, which most of you aren't, I would love if you could give me that sub. I would love to have you around. We all know when I hit that 75, I'm getting into full high whore drag. So if you want to see that, subscribe. And I have so many fun videos coming out soon. I have different videos that I haven't really tried before that I want to try new things. It's a new year. It's not a new me. It's the same old bitch. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not already, listen to the Rigged Recap wherever you listen to your podcasts. I have 2 seasons going concurrently right now. One with Kayla Says, where we talk about season 16 every week, and one with Be Like Boy, where we talk about UK versus the World 2 every week. So if you want more of my annoying-ass voice in your ears, go listen to the Rigged Recap. And that's all for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.